Hey, it's Matt Haynes. And you know, camera gimbals are an amazing piece of technology. Now, they can be a little intimidating though, especially when it comes to setting them up and balancing them. So I'm making this video to help you get your gimbal set up properly and just to make that whole process a lot smoother. Now, I do promise that it will get easier and easier every time you do it. Also, there's one part of the setup process that I don't know if it's the manufacturers are just not explaining it correctly, but it seems to really stump people. And I'm going to show you a little hack that will get you right through that stage. All right, so what does a gimbal do? Well, it stabilizes your camera. It smooths out all the bumps. It also keeps your camera level if you want it to, and it allows you to just do these movements with your camera that feel like they're just like on rails or something like that. Okay, so there are some terms you need to know. Yes, some vocabulary involved, but don't worry, I'm not going to test you. I just want to make sure that you understand the words I'm using here. Now, most gimbals are 3-axis gimbals. That means that they have motors moving them in 3 dimensions. The first one is tilt. It's up and down. Like if you nod your head up and down, you're tilting your head up and down. That's the tilt axis. You also have the pan axis, which is if your head was looking left to right or right to left. That's panning. And then a roll is like a barrel roll with an airplane, or if like you're tilting your head to the left or right like that. It's rolling left and right. So you've got your tilt, your pan, and your roll axes. Now you would think with 3 motors, 3 axes, 3 dimensions to move in, that there should be maybe 3 adjustments on a gimbal. There's actually 4. You need 2 adjustments to adjust the tilt properly. So you've got your camera moving up and down and forward and back. And then to adjust your balance for your roll axis, you got to move left to right. And then you have to bring that whole thing back over the center of gravity of the gimbal itself, bring it over the motor that controls the pan. All right, I've moved everything in just a little closer so you can see what's going on. And before we get into the main full-size gimbals, I just wanted to briefly talk about phone gimbals. Now, phone gimbals are super useful as well. They tend to be much simpler. Some gimbals just grab the phone by the middle and you're all set there. This gimbal is a little bit different because you just pop the phone in here like so. And the only thing you need to worry about with a phone gimbal is the gimbal balanced over the length of the phone? So in other words, if you're shooting horizontally, will it balance like this? And as you can see here, it's tilting this way. So on this particular gimbal, I've got a knob right here. And when I loosen this, it allows me to move the gimbal back and forth like this. So what I want to do is I want to make sure my phone is balanced horizontally like this. And that's pretty good, right? Like that. See, if I tilt it like that, it snaps back into place. It levels out. So this is no good. This is no good in the other direction. So I want it just so that it's balanced over the length of the phone. All right, I'm going to tighten it up. For all gimbals, you balance them with the power turned off, which is what I've just done here with the phone gimbal. And the reason is because you want it so well balanced that the gimbal motors don't have to work very hard to turn it the way you want it. If they're constantly fighting just to keep your camera or your phone level, then they exhaust themselves, they use up the battery, they also wear themselves out faster. So that's why you want to really have a nicely balanced gimbal. So this is turned off, but I can turn it on now. All right, and that is ready to go. Now, like I said before, phone gimbals are pretty straightforward. There's usually only one adjustment you have to make. Let's get into the real stuff now. All right, for this demonstration, I am actually going to be using 2 separate gimbals from 2 different manufacturers because even though they operate on similar principles, the way you adjust them can be slightly different. So I've got a PavoTube gimbal here. I don't remember the model number, but it's been discontinued. And then this is a Zhiyun gimbal here, and I'll put an affiliate link down in the video notes if you want to check it out. Both of these gimbals do a great job. And so I've got 2 cameras as well, just some cameras I had laying around. that I'm going to use to demonstrate and balance both of these. All right, so the first thing to do is make sure your gimbal is turned off. You've got to balance it with the gimbal turned off. So when you unpack your gimbal for the first time, it's going to be locked and stowed away in a position that it allows it to lay flat. And but there is usually a second configuration that you can lock it, and that's how you lock it to start setting up your camera. So with your gimbal, make sure that you've probably got a little tripod base here, that screws on and off. Make sure you set that up so that you can have your gimbal upright. Now, what we want to do is, first of all, I would have the readout or the screen of your gimbal facing back towards you. Okay, now what you want to do is you want to unlock the roll axis motor. This is the roll motor of the PavoTube right here, and the lock is here. So I'm going to unlock it and relock it in that position. For the Zhiyun crane gimbal, this is the roll motor here. It locks here. I'm going to unlock and lock it in this position here like that. All right, and we've got to unlock and relock the tilt motor. And on the Zhiyun crane, the tilt motor is right here. I'm going to unlock and relock so it's locked like that. And now the camera sits up here. And so this is locked in its sort of like default position right here. For the PavoTube, the lock is actually on the top here. So I'm going to unlock, allow it to swing into place, and relock it there. Okay, now this is really important. When you set up your camera on your gimbal, you've got to set it up exactly like it's going to be when you shoot. In other words, take the lens cap off. Put the lens hood on if you're going to be using a lens hood. If you're using any wireless microphones or something like that, have the receiver installed on top. And also important, if you're using a zoom lens, set the zoom to where you're going to be using it and leave it there. And if you can, lock it, because when you, on some lenses, when you adjust the zoom, it's going to move the center of gravity forward and back, and you want to have that all good to go. So your gimbal is going to have the equivalent of a tripod plate. That's something that's going to be removed, and you screw to the bottom of your camera. Now the PavoTube one is just a simple Arca Swiss style tripod plate. So I'm going to unscrew that, take it off, and just tighten that up. And I'm just basically centering it on the bottom of my camera. I'm not being super fussy about that. Make sure it's good and tight. And then I'm going to put it on the gimbal. When you put it on the gimbal, make sure that your camera is all the way over to the right. It should be touching the tilt motor. So this is not good. See the gap there? You want to scoot it all the way over and lock it into position. Now notice I've got my lens cap on. I better take that off. I'm going to take it off for the other camera too. And I'm going to flip this lens hood around so that it's how I would shoot with. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with the other gimbal and camera. As you can see, the plate on the Zhiyun is a lot longer, and basically this allows you to offset it if you've got like some gnarly big lens on the front or something like that. But again, just for the purposes here, I'm just setting it in the middle of the camera, and I'm going to tighten it down, and that should do it. Okay, so the first step is to balance the tilt axis. Now, unfortunately, the hardest part is balancing the tilt axis, and you have to start with that. The reason why it's the hardest part is because there are actually two steps, and they kind of work in conjunction with each other, but I've got a little hack that will make it a lot simpler. So first thing to do is you got to unlock your tilt axis. On the PavoTube, the button is right here. I unlock it, and it allows the camera to move up and down like that. All right, I'm going to set my zoom so that it's wide angle. And on the Zhiyun crane, the button is on the side here. I'm going to unlock that, and it just falls forward like that. Okay, so there's our tilt axis unlocked on the Zhiyun, and this is the tilt axis unlocked on the PavoTube. Now, what you want to do, this is the little hack here, is that you're gonna be adjusting your camera up and down and forward and back. But what you want to do is you want to get it so that your camera naturally falls backward first. On the PavoTube, there is this piece of metal here that goes parallel with the lens. I'm gonna loosen that there, and I'm gonna slide the camera back until it naturally wants to fall back like that. And then I'm gonna tighten it up. Okay, so that's falling backward. Now it's obviously falling far over, okay? So, but we'll sort that out in a sec. We don't want it to naturally fall forward. We want it to fall backward. So with the Zhiyun crane, there is this lever that unlocks the actual tripod head kind of thing, allows it to slide back. Now, I'm noticing that when I slide it all the way back, it's still not far enough. So I've actually got to take off the camera and move the tripod mount a little bit so that the camera will be able to balance backwards. So I'm going to do that off camera. All right, so what I did is I just moved the plate forward on the camera so that it means the camera center of gravity falls backward a little bit. Now I can, if I move this all the way back, the camera will fall backwards like that, and then I'm going to lock that into position for now. And the PavoTube is also locked in position. All right, our next goal is to get it so that the camera, it's falling backwards, but we want it so that the lens is pointing straight up, not a little bit forward, not a little bit back. And obviously with the PavoTube here, it's going way over the top here, and whereas the Zhiyun crane, it's almost where it should be. It's tilted a little bit forward. You can see it like that. So the way we do that is we adjust that balance by adjusting the cameras up and down, because as you adjust it up and down, if it's tilted backward, it's going to level that out. So on the Zhiyun, we loosen this bit here, and this frees up this to slide up and down like that. See how it slides down and up? I gotta admit, on the Zhiyun crane, or at least this particular model, it does not slide very easily. It gets kind of jammed up a little bit. Okay, so it's going to be very fine motion there. That's a little bit too far back. I'll put it sideways so you can see it there. All right, that looks just about vertical. And if you're not sure, always just kind of give it a wiggle. It's going a little bit further, and they really are very fine adjustments. Okay, that's going to do. So I'm going to tighten that up. That is pointing straight up. Let's just do that with the PavoTube as well. Now on the PavoTube, we have, it's in the same position as on the Zhiyun crane. It's this little lever right here that allows me to move the camera up and down like that. So we're trying to get the lens pointing straight up. Okay, that's pointing straight up. Tighten it up. All right, now that we have both cameras pointing straight up, now we want to balance it so that they balance forward like this. And to do that, we've got to move our camera forward and backwards so that it's balanced that way. And on the Zhiyun crane, this one lever allows you to remove the camera plate, but it also allows you to move it backwards and forwards. So I'm going to unlock that, and then I'm going to move it forward ever so slightly until it balances like that. So I'm going to lock it just to check it. All right, so you know it's balanced when you can turn it like this or like that, and it just stays in place. It doesn't drift back and forth. Okay, that is nicely balanced on the tilt. Okay, so let's do the same thing for the PavoTube here. To move the camera backwards and forwards on the PavoTube, it's this little thumb screw right here. I'm going to loosen it, and I'm going to move it to where the camera balances just perfectly. Look at that. Very nice. It's not going clunk or anything like that. It's just going wherever I tell it to go. Okay, that is nicely balanced. All right, so we have our tilt axis balanced on both of the gimbals. All right, that was the hardest part, getting that camera so that it's not going to flop forward or flop backwards when you've got the tilt. So now we're going to adjust the roll axis. And like I said, it gets easier from here on out. So on the PavoTube, the roll lock is right here. I'm going to unlock that, and notice it flops, right? This is the roll axis here. We need it to stay horizontal and steady. We don't want that. That's a bad adjustment. What we do is we need to adjust the camera left and right to get it to where it's balanced for the roll axis. And to do that, on the PavoTube, there is this little thumb screw right here on the back of the roll motor. Going to loosen it up, and then it allows me to move this arm back and forth through the roll axis motor until we have it balanced. Okay, that's getting there, but it's not quite, is it? It's got to be a little bit more. And for here, we want to make sure that when we move it in one direction, it snaps back to the horizontal or as close to it as possible. All right, we're going to do the same thing on the Zhiyun crane here, and the roll axis lock is right here, this little gray button on the roll motor itself. I'm going to unlock it. Now, the way it adjusts on the crane, on the PavoTube, this arm would go through the roll axis motor, essentially. On here, we adjust it actually by moving the camera left and right on this bar here. And the way you adjust that on the Zhiyun is this little lever underneath right here. It says lock. This allows us to slide the camera back and forth like this. And again, I'm trying to adjust it so that it's staying horizontal. And if I tilt it, this doesn't actually snap back, but that's fine. If it's not automatically drifting over to one side or the other, then it's balanced. And I'm going to go ahead and lock it. And now would be a good time just to make sure that my tilt is still done properly and my roll axis. Basically, when you move the camera somewhere, it should just stay there. Tilt still looks good. And the camera does move on the roll axis, but it is moving back into the horizontal position like so. Okay, so far so good. Okay, the last adjustment we have to do is for the pan motor. The pan motor is down here in the handle, and it allows the camera to move back and forth here. Now, this one is a little harder to judge, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring the center of gravity of the camera back over the center of the gimbal here. And so on the, well, first of all, I'm going to unlock it here. It's right there on the side there on the Zhiyun. So when you tilt your camera forward and back, if the camera swings around very quickly and violently like that, then it means you need to adjust it over the balance, over the pan motor. Now, you're not worrying about the rest of the tilt or the roll. You're just worrying about this bar here. Does it go whoosh, whoosh, like revolving back and forth very quickly? And that is obviously flopping this way, okay? So notice the camera came towards me. That means that the camera is front heavy, and I'm going to want to move this bar back here. So I'm going to undo this little lever here. And I'm going to move it back just a little bit. Basically, it's kind of move and then readjust. And that's still spinning around there a little bit. So to be honest, I have found that with the pan adjustment, as long as it's pretty close, it's fine. If it's moving a little bit when you tilt it backwards and forward, you know, it's kind of rotating around very slowly and gently, that's okay. But if it's swinging hard, then that's not good. And that's moving a little bit. Maybe I can do a little bit better here. Yeah, that's actually perfect. See, it's not this bar right here is not moving at all when I move that forward. Okay, so let's do the PavoTube here as well. All right, whoa, yes, okay, so that needs some adjusting there. And, okay, so camera's too far forward because it came back to me, so I'm going to loosen this thumb wheel here, move it back a little bit, This camera is really heavy. It's got a heavy lens on it, so that makes sense. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay, one final check to make sure that our tilts and our rolls and all that are doing what they should. Now we can power these on, and we'll go through the final steps. Okay, every time you put on your camera and you balance your gimbal, you actually need to have it go through the electronic auto balancing as well. And that's different for different gimbals, but basically it tests all the motors and makes sure everything's stable, and then we'll report back and it will tell you whether it's successful or not. So, so on the Zhiyun here, I hit the menu button on the side like that, and motor, and then I click auto. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I'm not holding the gimbal. It has to be on a flat surface, because if you're moving it around, that's going to mess up the calibration. So let me move this over here. I'm going to hit auto. Okay, so it's doing auto tune as it says, and notice how the camera's wiggling. It's checking the tilt motor. It's checking the roll motor. There we go. There's the roll motor, and then it should do the pan as well. There's the pan right there. It's a very subtle movements. And then it'll report back if there's an error or something like that. And I'm just waiting for it to finish. Okay. And on the PavoTube, let me move that out of the way here. On the PavoTube, if you can see that screen there, payload setting is what I do here. I tap that and auto calibrate, confirm, and it's going to do the same thing. It's checking all the different motors there. You can even hear it humming a little bit. Now, does that mean we're done? No, not quite. We're almost done. Here's the thing. You want to make sure that your motors aren't straining themselves. So pick up your gimbal and just move it forward and back, left and right like that. Turn the pan, things like that. And listen for listen for any noise like humming or vibration, or if you feel it shaking, then it means that something's out of whack and you got to redo the calibration. Okay, so that one is looking good. And all right, I'm listening and I'm feeling, and everything's very smooth and all that. So these are perfectly calibrated. Yay! Now, that took a long time because I'm explaining every step. You will get faster and faster and faster each time you do it. Okay, there's one last, well, it's not a step. It's more like you get bonus points if this works, okay? So let's say you've been using your gimbal for a half an hour and then you're all done. If you turn your gimbal off like I'm about to do now, wait, and your camera stays in the same position, it doesn't immediately flop somewhere, then you, my friend, have done an excellent job of balancing.